Commander Jake Morrison stood in the main hall of the starship Aurora Dawn, watching alien guests from across the galaxy gather for the monthly cultural exchange ceremony. The large room buzzed with different languages and strange sounds as beings from 12 different worlds mingled together. Jake wore his best uniform, a dark blue fabric pressed and clean, with gold stripes showing his rank as ship commander. The Aurora Dawn was not just any ship. It was one of the newest vessels in the human space fleet, designed to carry diplomats, scientists, and their families on long missions to build friendships with alien races. For 3 years now, Jake had called this ship home, along with his 8-year-old daughter Emma, and about 200 other humans. Emma sat on a bench near the big windows that showed the stars outside. She wore a simple white dress that her mother had picked out before they left Earth 2 years ago. Her brown hair was tied back with a blue ribbon, and she swung her legs back and forth as she watched the aliens walk around the room. The Zelthari delegation stood near the center of the room. They were tall and proud, with purple skin that seemed to shine under the lights. Their leader, Ambassador Krulfin, wore robes covered in silver designs that told the story of their empire's many victories in war. The Zelthari controlled 40 star systems and had the strongest military in this part of the galaxy. Everyone knew they thought humans were useful, but not very important. On the other side of the room, the Kef representatives studied everything with their large, dark eyes. The Kef looked almost human, but their heads were bigger and they had pale, gray skin. They were famous for being very smart and logical. Dr. Zexami, their chief science officer, carried a small device that recorded everything he saw and heard. The Kef controlled the best computers and research centers. In known space. There were also beings from the coral worlds, who looked like walking trees with bright green skin. The metal folk from the asteroid mines had bodies that seemed to be made of living copper and steel. Even the gas riders were there, floating in special suits that let them move in normal air. Jake had hosted many of these meetings, but tonight felt different. The ship's cultural officer, Dr. Lisa Chun, had planned something special. She wanted each species to share a piece of their music or art. The idea was to help everyone understand each other better. "Attention, everyone," Dr. Chun called out, her voice carrying across the room through the translation devices everyone wore. "Welcome to our cultural exchange evening. Tonight, we will share the beauty of our different worlds through music, and tonight, stories." The aliens gathered in a large circle, with humans mixed in among them. Jake found a spot near Emma, putting his hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him and smiled. The Zelthari went first. Ambassador Krulfin activated a small device. That filled the room with deep, booming sounds like thunder, mixed with the roar of ocean waves. And music told of great battles and victories. The Zelthari stood taller as their war songs played, and Jake could see pride in their glowing yellow eyes. Next came the Kef. Dr. Zexami shared what he called logic harmonies, strange but beautiful, sounds that seemed to follow perfect mathematical patterns. The music made Jake think of stars moving in space and planets spinning around suns. It was cold, but somehow peaceful. The other species took their turns. The tree folk shared songs that sounded like wind through leaves. The metal folk created music by tapping their fingers against their bodies, making bell-like sounds. Each performance was different and interesting. Then it was humanity's turn. Dr. Chun stepped forward and smiled at the group. "Humans have many different kinds of music," she said. "Tonight, I thought we would share something from our past. This song is very old and comes from a group of people who lived on Earth long ago." She pressed a button on her music player, and the room filled with a lively, happy melody. The song started slow, but quickly became fast and joyful. Jake recognized it right away. Hava Nagila, a traditional Jewish celebration song. He had heard it at weddings and parties back on Earth. The aliens listened politely, but Jake could see they were not very impressed. The song was not as grand as the Zalfari war music or as perfect as the Kef logic harmonies. It was just a simple, happy tune that made people want to dance. But then Emma spoke up, her young voice cutting through the music. "Daddy," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "what does this song mean? Why are the people singing it?" The music stopped. All eyes turned to Jake and his daughter. The aliens waited quietly, probably expecting a simple answer about human entertainment or religious practice. Jake felt his face get warm as everyone stared at him. Ambassador Krelthon crossed his arms, looking slightly bored. Dr. Zexami tilted his head, ready to record whatever Jake said for his research. The other aliens watched with mild curiosity, looked down at Emma's bright, curious eyes. She really wanted to know. This was not just a question about a song. She wanted to understand something about her own people and their history. "Well," Jake said, his voice carrying across the quiet room, "that's a good question, Emma. The song is called Hava Nagila, which means 'let us rejoice' in Hebrew." He paused, thinking about how to explain this to both his daughter and the alien guests who knew nothing about human history. "The people who created this song," Jake continued, "had a very hard life. They were hurt and chased away from their homes many times. Other people tried to destroy them completely. But instead of giving up, they made this song to celebrate being alive and being together." Emma nodded, but Jake could see she wanted to know more. The aliens were also listening more carefully now. Something in Jake's voice had caught their attention. Dr. Lisa Chun stepped closer, sensing that something important was happening. Captain Rita Gomez, the ship's security chief, also moved into the circle. Other human crew members began to gather around. "But Daddy," Emma said, "if they were hurt so much, why did they make happy music? Why didn't they make sad songs?" Jake felt something stir in his chest. This was not just about one song anymore. This was about something much bigger. Something that made humans different from every other species in this room. He looked around at the alien faces watching him, waiting for his answer. They had no idea what they were about to learn about humanity. "That's a very good question, Emma," Jake sighed, his voice growing stronger. "And the answer tells us something very important about human beings." Jake looked at his daughter's waiting face, and then at the circle of alien beings around them. The room was so quiet, he could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. Everyone wanted to hear his answer. "Emma," Jake said slowly, "humans are different from other people in the galaxy. When bad things happen to us, we don't just survive them. We turn them into something good." Ambassador Krelthon made a small sound that might have been doubt. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied Jake. The Zelfari were used to winning through strength and power. They did not understand what Jake meant. "The people who made this song," Jake continued, "were called the Jewish people. For thousands of years, other groups tried to hurt them. They were forced to leave their homes over and over again. They were not allowed to own land in many places. They were blamed for things that were not their fault." Dr. Zexami's recording. Device beeped softly as it captured every word. The Kef scientist's large eyes grew wider with interest. This was not the simple cultural explanation he had expected. "In many countries," Jake said, his voice growing stronger, "laws were made against Jewish people. They could not work certain jobs. They could not live in certain areas. Their children could not go to the same schools as other children." Emma's face showed confusion. "But Daddy, that's not fair. Why would people do that?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Jake said honestly. "Sometimes people are afraid of others who are different from them. Sometimes they need someone to blame when things go wrong." Captain Rita Gomez stepped forward. She was a small woman with dark hair and kind eyes, but Jake knew she was one of the toughest people on the ship. My grandmother told me stories, Rita said to the group. Her family came from a place called Spain. They had to hide who they were for hundreds of years. If people found out they were Jewish, they could be killed. The tree folk representative, Cole Green, made a rustling sound. That meant surprise in his language. The idea of hiding your identity for centuries was strange to his people, who were proud of their connection to their home forests. But they did not just hide, Jake said. They kept their traditions alive in secret. They taught their children the old songs and stories. They found ways to celebrate even when it was dangerous. Dr. Lisa Chun moved closer to the group. As the ship's cultural expert, she had studied human history for years, but she had never seen Jake talk about it with such feeling. The song we just heard, Jake continued, was created in the early 1900s. This was a time when Jewish people were finally allowed to return to their old homeland after being away for almost 2,000 years. 2,000 years? Dr. Zexami interrupted, his logical mind struggling with the number. Your people maintained cultural continuity for 2 millennia without a central government or homeland. Yes, Jake said simply. They kept their language, their customs, their faith, and their identity alive for 2,000 years while living in other people's countries. The metal folk representative, Kronewalker, made a sound like bells ringing. In his culture, being separated from your home for even a few years was considered a great tragedy. But here's the important part, Jake said, looking around at all the alien faces. When they finally got the chance to come home, they did not make angry songs about their enemies. They did not make sad songs about their suffering. They made Hava Nagila, a song that means, let us be happy. Amma clapped her hands together. They made a party song. Exactly. Jake smiled at his daughter. They made a song for dancing and celebrating. Even after all those years of being hurt and pushed around, their first thought was to celebrate being together again. Ambassador Krelthine moved forward, his tall purple form looming over Jake. This makes no sense from a military perspective, he said through his translator. A people who had been conquered and scattered should focus on building strength and seeking revenge against their enemies. But they did build strength, Jake replied, just not the kind you might expect. He gestured to Dr. Chun, who activated a wall screen showing images from Earth's history. Look at what Jewish people gave to the world during those 2,000 years of wandering, Jake said. Great scientists, doctors, writers, musicians, and teachers. They created businesses and helped build the countries where they lived. Instead of using their energy for revenge, they used it to make the world better. The screen showed pictures of famous Jewish scientists and inventors. Dr. Zexami recognized some of the names from his own research files. Albert Einstein, Jake said, pointing to a picture of an old man with wild hair. He gave us the theory of relativity, which helped us understand space and time. That knowledge helped us build the faster-than-light engines that brought us all together. More pictures appeared on the screen. Jonas Salk created a medicine that saved millions of children from a terrible disease. Irving Berlin wrote songs that made people happy during wars. There are thousands more examples. Captain Retta Gomes nodded. My grandmother always said that the best way to fight hate is to create something beautiful. The gas rider representative floated closer, his mechanical suit humming softly. Through his translator, he said, this pattern of behavior is ... unusual. Most species respond to persecution with either submission or violent resistance. Humans are not like most species, Jake said. We have a third option. We turn pain into art, fear into hope, and suffering into strength. Dr. Chun brought up another image on the screen. It showed people dancing in a circle, holding hands and singing. They were at a wedding, and their faces were full of joy. This picture was taken in 1943, Jake said quietly. These people are dancing and singing Hava Nagila at a wedding in a place called the Warsaw Ghetto. The room became very quiet. Even the ship's engines seemed to hum more softly. At that time, Jake continued, these people were trapped in a small area of a city. They had very little food. They knew that their enemies were planning to kill them all. And yet, when too young, people decided to get married. The whole community came together to celebrate. Emma looked up at her father with wide eyes. They had a party even when they were scared? Yes, sweetheart, Jake said, his voice gentle. They decided that as long as they were alive, they would find reasons to be happy together. The alien. Representatives looked at each other with expressions of confusion and growing respect. This was not how any of their peoples would have behaved in such a situation. Jake looked around the room at the alien faces staring back at him. He could see they were trying to understand something that seemed impossible to their ways of thinking. Ambassador Krelfin's purple skin had turned a darker shade, which Jake knew meant the Zalthari was either confused or upset. Commander Morrison, Ambassador Krelfin said through his translator, his voice carrying the tone of someone used to giving orders. You speak of one group of humans. But what about your entire species? Surely this behavior is not normal for all humans. Jake felt Emma's small hand slip into his. She was listening to every word, even though she probably did not understand everything. Her trust in him made him feel stronger. That's a very good question, Jake said to the ambassador. And the answer might surprise you even more. Dr. Chun moved to the control panel and brought up a new display on the wall screen. It showed a map of Earth with different colored areas marked across the continents. The truth is, Jake said, this pattern of behavior is not just found in one group of humans. It exists in our entire species. Everywhere on Earth, in every culture. You can find the same thing. People who faced terrible situations and responded by creating something beautiful. The screen changed to show pictures of people from different parts of Earth. Their skin was different colors, they wore different clothes, and they looked very different from each other. But they were all human. In Africa, Jake continued, there were people who were stolen from their homes and forced to work as slaves in other countries. They were treated worse than animals. They were not allowed to learn to read or write. Families were broken apart and sold to different owners. Emma squeezed his hand tighter. That's really bad, Daddy. Yes, it was, Jake agreed. But do you know what those people did? They created new kinds of music. They mixed the songs they remembered from Africa with the music they heard in their new countries. They made something called blues and jazz and gospel music. Captain Retta Gomez stepped forward again. My other grandmother was from Mexico. She told me about her people, the Aztecs. When Spanish soldiers came to their land 500 years ago, they destroyed the Aztec cities and tried to wipe out their culture. What happened to them? Asked Cole Green, the tree folk representative. They survived, Rita said with pride. In her voice, they kept their traditions alive by mixing them with a new culture that was forced on them. Today, you can still see Aztec symbols and customs in Mexican art, food, and celebrations. Dr. Zixamia's recording device beeped faster as it tried to keep up with all the new information. This suggests a species-wide behavioral pattern, he said in his careful scientific way. But such consistency across isolated populations should be statistically impossible. Jake smiled at the Kef scientist. You're starting to understand something important about humans. We don't just survive hard times. We use them to become stronger and more creative. The wall screen changed again, showing more pictures from Earth's history. Jake pointed to an image of people dancing around a fire. These are Native Americans, he said. The people who lived in North America before other humans arrived from across the ocean. When new settlers came, they brought diseases that killed millions of Native Americans. The survivors were forced off their lands and made to live in small areas called reservations. Another conquest scenario, Ambassador Crelfin muttered. I assumed they were absorbed into the dominant culture. No, Jake said firmly. They kept their traditions alive. They continued to tell their old stories, perform their dances, and practice their spiritual beliefs, even when it was against the law. Today, hundreds of years later, Native American culture is still alive and growing. Emma looked up at the pictures on the screen. Daddy, why do humans do this? Why don't they just give up when bad things happen? Jake knelt down so he was at eye level with his daughter. The aliens leaned in closer to hear his answer. I think it's because humans understand something very important, Jake said softly. We know that life is precious and short. When someone tries to take away our happiness, our culture, or our hope, we don't want to let them win. So we create new happiness, new culture, and new hope. Dr. Chun brought up another image on the screen. It showed people in gray and white striped clothes standing behind wire fences. Their faces were thin and tired, but some of them were smiling. This picture was taken in 1945, Dr. Chun said quietly, at the end of what humans call World War II. These people had been prisoners in camps where their captors tried to kill them. But even in those terrible places, they found ways to help each other, to share food, to tell stories, and to keep hope alive. The room became very quiet again. Even the small sounds of the ship seemed to fade away. Some of them wrote poems on scraps of paper, Jake continued. Others taught children mathematics by drawing numbers in the dirt. Musicians played imaginary instruments, moving their fingers as if they were making music, because remembering beautiful songs helped them stay human. Kronwalker, the metal folk representative, made a sound like wind chimes. Your species creates beauty in the presence of destruction. This is difficult for us to understand. When our mining colonies are attacked, we focus only on defense and repair. But that's exactly the point, Jake said, standing up again. Humans don't just defend and repair. We use every challenge as a chance to grow and create something new. The gas rider floated closer, his mechanical suit humming. Commander Morrison, you speak of humans as if this behavior is automatic. But surely some of your people respond differently to hardship. Jake nodded. Of course, some humans do give up. Some become bitter and angry. Some hurt other people because they have been hurt themselves. But the amazing thing about our species is that even in the darkest times, there are always some humans who choose to create light instead of adding to the darkness. Dr. Zexami looked up from his recording device. You are describing a form of psychological resilience that appears to be genetically encoded in your species. This would explain many things about human behavior that we have observed but not understood. What do you mean? Asked Ambassador Crelfin, the Kef scientists. Large eyes grew brighter with excitement. Humans consistently perform better than expected in crisis situations. They adapt to new environments faster than our models predict. They solve problems in ways that our logical systems cannot calculate. We have always assumed this was random, chance or luck, but it's not luck, Jake said. It's who we are. When humans face impossible situations, we don't just try to survive them. We try to find meaning in them. We try to learn from them. And we try to use them to build something better for the future. Emma tugged on his uniform sleeve. Daddy, does that mean we're special? Jake looked around at all the alien faces watching them. He could see understanding beginning to dawn in their eyes. They were starting to realize that they had completely misunderstood what humans were capable of. Yes, Emma, Jake said with growing confidence. I think maybe we are. Ambassador Krelthin stepped forward, his tall purple form towering over Jake. The yellow glow in his eyes had changed from boredom to something that looked almost like worry. Commander Morrison, the Zelthari said, his voice carrying a hedge. That made several humans in the room tense up. Your stories are interesting, but they sound like fairy tales. You make your species sound like heroes who always win through hope and songs. This does not match what we know about human wars and conflicts. Jake looked at the ambassador calmly. He had expected this challenge. The Zelthari were a proud warrior, race who believed that strength came from weapons and armies, not from art and music. You're right to question me, Jake said. Let me show you something that might change your mind. He nodded to Dr. Chun, who brought up new images on the wall. Screen. The first picture showed a city that had been almost completely destroyed. Buildings were broken and burned. Smoke rose from piles of rubble. This is London, England, in 1940, Jake said. The city was being bombed every night by enemy aircraft. Thousands of people were dying. Whole neighborhoods were being destroyed. Emma moved closer to her father, staring at the terrible pictures on the screen. Did the people run away, Daddy? Some did, Jake admitted, but most stayed. And do you know what they did while the bombs were falling? The screen changed to show people sitting in underground train stations. They had blankets and small bags with them. Children were sitting on the floor, while adults read books or played cards. They moved underground during the bombing, Jake continued. But they didn't just hide and wait. They created communities down there. People who had never met before became neighbors. They shared food and stories. Musicians played instruments. Teachers held classes for children. Captain Rita Gomez pointed to one of the pictures. Look at their faces. They're scared, but they're not defeated. Dr. Zeksami studied the images carefully. Remarkable. They maintained social structures and cultural activities even under direct military assault. That's not all, Jake said. The screen showed a new picture of people working in factories. During the day, when the bombing stopped, they came back up and went to work. They built airplanes and weapons to fight back. They grew food in parks and backyards because supply ships were being sunk. Ambassador Krelthin made a sound of grudging respect. This shows military determination, but it still does not prove your point about creating beauty from suffering. Jake smiled. Dr. Chun, show them the next images. The screen changed to show posters with bright colors and bold letters. They had pictures of smiling people and encouraging words like, keep calm, and carry on, and we can do it. Even while their city was being destroyed, Jake said. British artists were creating propaganda posters to keep people's spirits up. Writers were publishing stories and poems. Radio shows continued to broadcast music and comedy programs. They made jokes while bombs were falling on them? Asked Colgreen, his tree-like form rustling with disbelief. Yes, Jake said. Comedy shows were some of the most popular radio programs during the war. People needed to laugh. It helped them stay strong. Dr. Chun brought up audio files and played clips from old radio shows, even though the words were in English and needed translation. The aliens could hear laughter from audiences who lived in a city under attack. This is illogical, Dr. Zeksami muttered, but Jake could see fascination in the scientist's large eyes. Humor requires mental resources that should be dedicated to survival activities. But humor is a survival activity for humans, Jake explained. It helps us cope with fear and stress. It brings people together. It reminds us that we're still alive and still human, no matter what happens to us. The wall screen changed again, showing a different scene. This time it was a group of people in prison uniforms, standing in rows. But they were singing, their mouths open and their faces turned upward. This was taken in a Japanese prison camp in 1943, Jake said quietly. These were Allied soldiers who had been captured during the war in the Pacific. They were given very little food and forced to do hard labor every day. Emma looked worried. Were they okay, Daddy? Many of them died, Jake said honestly. The conditions were terrible. But the ones who survived did something amazing. They formed a secret choir. The aliens leaned in closer to hear this part of the story. Every few weeks, when the guards weren't watching, they would gather and sing together, Jake continued. They sang songs from their home countries. They sang popular songs from before the war. They even created new songs about their experiences. Captain Ritagones nodded. My grandfather was in that war. He told me that singing together was what kept many soldiers from losing hope completely. Chrome Walker made his bell-like sound. Again, they used cultural expression as a psychological weapon against despair. Exactly, Jake said. And this happened in prison camps all over the world. French resistance fighters sang songs while hiding from Nazi soldiers. Russian civilians sang folk songs while their city was under siege for 900 days. American soldiers sang songs while marching through jungles and deserts. The gas rider floated closer, his mechanical suit humming with interest. Commander Morrison, you are describing a pattern of behavior that seems to contradict basic survival instincts. Why would your people waste energy on non-essential activities during life-threatening situations? Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces. He could see they were really trying to understand, but it was hard for them to grasp something so different from their own ways of thinking. Because for humans, Jake said slowly, these activities are not non-essential. They are what makes survival worth the effort. A human who gives up music, art, laughter, and hope might live through a crisis, but they won't really be alive anymore. Doctor. Chung brought up one more image on the screen. It showed people dancing in the street. They were laughing and crying at the same time. Some were kissing each other. Others were waving flags. This picture was taken on the day World War II ended. Jake said, after 6 years of death and destruction, the first thing people did when they heard the war was over was dance in the streets. Emma clapped her hands together. They had a big party. The biggest party in human history, Jake agreed. All over the world, people came out of their houses and celebrated together. They sang, they danced, they played music. After all that suffering, their first reaction was joy. Ambassador Krulthan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different than before. Commander Morrison, if what you say is true, then humans possess a form of psychological warfare that we have never encountered. It's not warfare, Jake said gently. It's just who we are. When life tries to break us down, we build ourselves back up with hope, beauty, and community. We don't do it to fight our enemies. We do it because we can't help ourselves. It's as natural to us as breathing. Dr. Zeksami looked up from his recording device, his eyes wide with a new understanding. This explains so many anomalies in our data about human behavior. You do not just adapt to harsh environments. You transform them into opportunities for cultural growth. Now you're beginning to understand, Jake said with a smile. Dr. Zeksami suddenly stood up from his chair, his pale gray skin almost glowing with excitement. His large dark eyes were fixed on Jake, as if he was seeing him for the first time. Commander Morrison, the KEF scientist said, his voice trembling. Slightly, I need to ask you something very important. In our records, we have documented many situations where humans were given assignments that should have been impossible to complete. Tasks that our computer models said had 0 chance of success. Jake nodded, wondering where this was going. Around the room, the other aliens were listening carefully. Yet somehow, Dr. Zeksami continued, humans succeeded in these impossible tasks far more often than any other species we have worked with. We assumed this was luck or some kind of statistical error in our data. What kinds of tasks? Asked Captain Rita Gomez. Dr. Zexami activated a small device, and holographic displays appeared in the air around him. Numbers and charts floated in the space above his head. Diplomatic missions to hostile civilizations, he said, pointing to one chart. Humans succeeded 67% of the time. The next best species succeeded only 22% of the time. More charts appeared. Scientific research in dangerous environments. Engineering projects with impossible deadlines. Rescue operations in situations where the victims were presumed dead. Ambassador Krelfin leaned forward, his yellow eyes studying the floating numbers. These statistics are surprising. But now I understand why, Dr. Zexami said, his voice growing more excited. Humans do not see impossible situations the same way other species do. When we encounter a problem that cannot be solved, we accept defeat and look for alternatives. But humans see impossible problems as puzzles to solve, Jake finished. We see them as challenges that will make us stronger if we can figure them out. Dr. Chun moved to her control panel and brought up new images on the wall screen. These pictures showed humans working in strange and dangerous places. Some were wearing spacesuits on airless moons. Others were deep underwater in metal diving suits. Still others were climbing tall mountains covered in snow and ice. Humans explore places that other species consider too dangerous, Dr. Chun said. We build cities in deserts, on mountains, and even on floating platforms in the ocean. We go to places where life should be impossible. Emma looked up at her father with pride. We're really good at hard stuff, aren't we, Daddy? We don't think of it as being good at hard stuff, Jake said, smiling down at her. We just think of it as normal life. When humans see a mountain, we want to climb it. When we see an ocean, we want to cross it. When we see a problem, we want to solve it. Cole Green, the tree folk representative, made his rustling sound. But surely this must cause many failures and deaths among your people. It does, Jake admitted. Humans fail a lot. We make mistakes. We try things that don't work. Sometimes we get hurt or die trying to do impossible things. Then why do you continue? Asked Chrome single quotes Walker. Jake thought for a moment, trying to find the right words. Because the failures teach us things. Every time a human fails at something, other humans learn from that failure. We use the knowledge to try again in a better way. Dr. Zexami's holographic displays changed to show new information. Our records show that humans have a unique approach to failure analysis. Instead of avoiding activities that have caused failures, you modify your approach and attempt them again. That's right, Captain Rita Gomez said. In human military training, we have a saying, fail fast, fail often, fail forward. It means that making mistakes quickly and learning from them is better than being too careful to try anything new. The gas rider floated closer, his mechanical suit humming thoughtfully. This explains another anomaly in our data. Humans volunteer for dangerous assignments at rates far higher than other species. We thought this was evidence of poor decision-making abilities. But it's not poor decision-making, Jake said. It's just a different way of looking at risk and reward. When a human sees a dangerous job that might help other people or lead to new discoveries, we think about the good things that could happen, not just the bad things. Dr. Chun brought up a new image on the screen. It showed a group of humans in spacesuits floating outside a damaged space station. They were working with tools to repair broken parts, while stars and planets spun around them in the background. This picture was taken 3 years ago, Dr. Chun said. A research station in the Kepler system had a critical failure in its life support systems. The crew had only 6 hours of air left. The aliens stared at the image with new understanding. Rescue ship was 12 hours away, Dr. Chon continued. According to all logical calculations, the crew should have died before help arrived. What happened? Emma asked, her eyes wide. The crew decided to go outside the station and try to fix the problem themselves, Jake said, even though they had never done that kind of repair before. Even though working in space without proper equipment was extremely dangerous. Dr. Zeke Sami checked his data files. Yes, I have the report here. The repair should have been impossible with the tools they had available. But they didn't think about whether it was impossible, Captain Rita Gomez said. They just thought about how to save their friends' lives. So they took apart pieces from other equipment and created new tools. They worked together and figured out a solution, and they succeeded, Dr. Chon added. All 7 crew members survived. Ambassador Krelthin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. In Zelthari culture, such a situation would be approached very differently. We would calculate the odds of success and finding them unacceptable. We would focus on ensuring the survivors could send a message about how they died. That's a logical approach, Jake said respectfully. But humans don't always use logic in these situations. We use something else. What do you call this something else? Dr. Zek Sami asked, his recording device beeping rapidly. Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces watching him. Then he looked down at Emma, who was listening to everything with bright, curious eyes. We call it hope, Jake said simply. Even when logic says something is impossible, humans hope that maybe we can find a way. And sometimes, that hope gives us the strength to do things that really should be impossible. Dr. Zek Sami's head tilted as he processed this information. Hope is not a measurable quantity. It cannot be calculated or predicted. No, Jake agreed, but it can move mountains. Chrome Walker made his bell-like sound again. Commander Morrison, are you saying that humans succeed at impossible tasks because you believe you can succeed, even when evidence suggests otherwise? I'm saying that humans succeed at impossible tasks because we refuse to accept that they're impossible, Jake replied. We always think there might be another way, another solution, another chance. The room fell quiet as the aliens absorbed this information. They were beginning to understand that they had completely misjudged human capabilities and the reasons behind human behavior. Emma tugged on Jake's uniform again. Daddy, does this mean humans are the best at everything? Jake chuckled and ruffled her hair. No, sweetheart. It just means we're very good at not giving up. Ambassador Krelthin stepped back from the group and stood very still for a long moment. His purple skin had changed to a lighter shade, and his yellow eyes were focused on something far away. When he finally spoke, his voice was different than it had been all evening. Commander Morrison, he said slowly, I must tell you something. The Zelthari Empire is facing a crisis. Jake felt the mood in the room change instantly. Dr. Chon moved closer, and Captain Rita Gomez's hand moved instinctively toward her communicator. 3 months ago, the ambassador continued, we encountered an enemy unlike any we have faced in our 1,000 years of conquest. They call themselves the Void Seekers. Their technology is beyond our understanding. Their ships appear and disappear. Without warning, our greatest fleets have been destroyed. Dr. Zek Sami looked up from his recording device with surprise. The Zelthari have not reported any military defeats in our diplomatic files. Because we have never had to report defeats before, Ambassador Krelthin said, his voice heavy with shame. We have always won through superior force and tactics. But force and tactics do nothing against an enemy who attacks from dimensions we cannot see and retreats to places we cannot follow. Emma moved closer to her father, sensing the seriousness in the adult voices around her. Our military commanders are paralyzed, the ambassador continued. They keep trying the same strategies that have always worked before. They build bigger weapons and stronger shields. But the Void Seekers simply appear in the middle of our formations and destroy our ships from the inside. Jake felt a cold chill run down his back. How many ships have you lost? 40% of our fleet, Ambassador Krelfin said quietly, including 2 of our greatest war vessels, ships that were thought to be unsinkable. The room became very quiet. Even Emma seemed to understand that something terrible was happening. Ambassador, Jake said carefully, why are you telling us this? The Zelthari leader looked directly at Jake, and for the first time, his proud expression showed something that looked like hope. Because tonight, listening to your stories about human behavior, I realized something, he said. When the Zelthari Empire faces an impossible enemy, we respond by doing the same things we have always done, only harder and faster. But that is not working. Dr. Zexami was recording everything, his large eyes wide with understanding. You require a different approach to problem solving. Yes, Ambassador Krelfin said simply. We need to learn how to think like humans, how to see impossible situations as puzzles instead of defeats, how to find hope when logic says there is none. Captain Rita Gomez stepped forward. Ambassador, are you asking for human military assistance? I am asking for something more valuable than military assistance, the ambassador replied. I am asking humans to teach us how to be human. Jake looked around the room at his fellow crew members. He could see the same thoughts in their eyes that were going through his own mind. This was not just a request for help. This was a recognition that humanity had something unique to offer the galaxy. Dr. Chun activated her communication panel. I need to contact Fleet Command immediately. This changes everything. Wait, Jake said, holding up his hand. Before we make any official reports, let's make sure we understand what's being asked here. He turned back to Ambassador Krelfin. You're not just asking for tactical advice or new weapons technology, are you? No, the ambassador said. We need to learn how to think creatively under pressure, how to find solutions that our computer models say are impossible, how to maintain hope and determination when everything looks hopeless. Dr. Zexami suddenly stood up again, his excitement returning. Ambassador Krelfin, the Kef Confederation is facing similar challenges. Not with an enemy, but with research problems that our logical methods cannot solve. What kind of problems? Jake asked. We have been trying to develop faster-than-light communication for 300 years, Dr. Zexami explained. Our mathematics show it should be possible, but every experiment fails. We have concluded that we are missing some fundamental understanding of the universe. But maybe you're not missing understanding, Emma said suddenly, her young voice cutting through the adult conversation. Maybe you're missing imagination. Everyone in the room turned to look at the 8-year-old girl. Her innocent comment had hit exactly the right point. Jake knelt down beside his daughter. What do you mean, sweetheart? Well, Emma said, looking around at all the alien faces watching her. Daddy said that humans solve impossible problems by thinking about them differently. Maybe the Kef people need to think about their problem differently too. Dr. Zexami stared at Emma with amazement. The child is suggesting that we apply human creative thinking methods to our scientific research. Exactly, Jake said, standing up with a new understanding of what was happening. This isn't just about helping with military problems. Every species here tonight has encountered situations where their traditional methods aren't working. Cole Green rustled his tree-like form. The tree folk have areas of our forests that are dying from a disease we cannot cure using our normal healing methods. Crow Walker made his bell sound. The metal folk have mining operations that have become trapped in cave-ins that our engineering cannot solve. The gas rider floated closer. My people have atmospheric storms that are destroying our floating cities faster than we can repair them. Jake looked around at all of them, feeling something incredible happening in this room. And all of these problems might benefit from the human approach of refusing to accept that they're impossible. Dr. Chun finished entering commands into her communication panel and turned back to the group. I've just sent a priority message to Fleet Command. I've requested that human cultural and creative thinking specialists be assigned to work with each of your species on these challenges. Ambassador Krelfin's skin brightened slightly. You would do this? You would share your people's unique abilities with us? Of course, Jake said with a smile. That's what humans do. When someone needs help, we try to help them. When someone faces an impossible problem, we try to solve it together. Emma clapped her hands together. And we can have more cultural exchange parties, too, with music and dancing. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that seemed to mix hope, excitement, and something that might have been relief. There is one condition, Jake added, his voice becoming more serious. The aliens waited tensely. We all work together as equals, Jake said firmly. Humans don't want to be teachers or leaders. We want to be partners. We learn from you, and you learn from us. Dr. Zexami nodded eagerly. A true exchange of knowledge and methods. Agreed, said Ambassador Krel Yan. Jake looked down at Emma, who had started this entire conversation with a simple question about an old song. Emma, do you want to tell everyone what Hava Nagila means again? Emma stood up straight and smiled at all the aliens around her. It means let us be happy together, and I think that's what we're going to do. As if responding to some invisible signal, Dr. Chun activated the music player again. The happy, dancing melody of Hava Nagila filled the room once more. This time, instead of listening politely, the aliens began to move with the music. Some swayed back and forth. Others tapped their feet or made rhythmic sounds. Emma grabbed her father's hands and began to dance, and soon other humans joined in. For the first time in galactic history, beings from 12 different worlds danced together to a song about finding joy in the face of adversity. And in that moment, Jake realized that his daughter's simple question had changed everything. Humanity was no longer the junior partner in galactic civilization. They had become the teachers of the most important lesson in the universe: how to never give up hope.